I didn't think you'd read my whole CV, man. It sounds incredibly boring when you hear it. I will try to give you the more entertaining version. Yeah? I actually have a more entertaining version. So firstly, congratulations, guys. I'm not even sure, am I allowed to congratulate you? You're not actually done yet, right? You're sort of done, right? And I don't think you can yank it back anymore. He said congratulations, so I guess I can say it too. And look, the one thing I know about my class at NCR is it was the least well-behaved group of people I've ever been with in my life, right? You guys are very well-behaved. Make some noise. Thank you. I feel a little bit more familiar now, right? And wow, guys, I'm incredibly envious of you, right? I know what you have been through. I don't know the details, but I know what my year at NCR was like. And if it was anything like the year you guys have been through, then I envy you because of what you've just had. I miss it incredibly. I have, by the way, luckily, one of my classmates, also pioneer, sitting here with me. So, I'm sure the word's going to get around. I have many an embarrassing image on my phone from those times that I cannot share. It will get us all into trouble. Thankfully, we graduated just before social media kicked in. I think we would not have had careers with the year that we just had. But I'm envious of you because you guys have now 3 things that you're never gonna lose as long as you keep up with them, right? The first is a world-class education, and I think we should just agree here for the record that this is the best business school in the world. Yeah. Sometimes the rankings agree with us and sometimes they don't, but it's the best business school in the world. That's the first thing. The second is, honestly, this is something I've appreciated as I've gotten older. I hate using that word, but older. Is just what it means to be part of an institution with this brand, this reputation, and this legacy. Because I know very few other institutions, believe me, and I've been a part of a few, which have this much history, legacy, and steeped in tradition, and at the same time are utterly and completely contemporary. And which is why I showed up over here in Singapore together with 52 other crazy people to take a risk, because I knew an institution of that kind would not get it wrong, and it didn't, right? And I have many a story to tell you about that time. So that's kind of the second thing. And the third thing is what you have with each other, right? I mean, you use the word network a lot, right? You'll have now an NCR network. I mean, I find the word network very mechanical, to be honest. Yeah, you'll have the network. You'll find that, in your careers, you'll meet people in other parts of the world who have NCR MBAs, and it's like a little secret handshake. You look at each other and because you're thinking about that week that you had, that party that you had, and, I've been there, you've been there too, right? You'll have that. You'll have the community, and that's mostly you guys, because you know each other, right? But within that community, you'll find a tribe. And I found mine over a long period of time, right? I mean, a classic midlife crisis thing to do, I think, these days is to make lists of people who you're close to, right? Who you think who matter in your life. I'm sure all of you have done that at different stages in your life. I just went through a phase, right? And a clean half of those people, whether I write 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, are NCR tribe mates of mine, right? Sometimes I see these people 3 times a month. Sometimes I meet them only once a year, but they're members of my tribe. And for that, I'm utterly grateful. So very, very lucky guys. So now look, these things are supposed to be about me giving you sage pieces of advice on what to do with your careers, right? I actually considered getting a ChatGPT version just to see which one would be more entertaining. Right? But I'll show you a few images instead, and maybe that'll be better. Does this thing work? Oh, there you go. It's working on the sides, so it's a little far away. So those are the 53 crazy people, and that, by the way, is the cleanest, most non-controversial image I could think of. Almost everything else is south of this. But why I'm showing that to you is why it's special to me is because you don't see a campus in that photograph. Right? When we were here, there was no campus. And why I consider those 53 people crazy is they came here for the reputation and the substance, not for the building. And they continue to remain some of my best friends. Again, Sue, thank you for being here. I will, by the way, one of the things that isn't in my CV is that my firm also owns C'est La Vie, where you may head later. See, that's what gets applause. That we own C'est La Vie. I can tell you it's one of the lowest ROI investments I've ever had. If you ever get into private equity, do not buy a nightclub. It's a very leaky bucket, physically and virtually. But 5 drinks, the first 5 drinks on me for somebody who can actually pick which one is me. And you can look carefully, but I can tell you it's very, very hard to pick, right? We all looked like very different people back then, right? But anyway, a gang who actually made a lot of traditions. Okay, this does kind of work. One of the proudest moments I had to stick this one up only because, Ilian, you and I actually look pretty good here, right? And this is not photoshopped, right? But I wanted to tell you a bit about myself before I start giving you sage advice, right? So I'm a product of my parents. Many of you have your parents here with you. Both mine are gone. But late last year, thanks to Ilian and the school support, I endowed a scholarship in my mother's name. She was the first woman civil engineer from my country, from India. Thank you for that, guys. And so she passed in 2012, and I thought 2022 would be a good time for me to bookend my memories of her and to endow a scholarship in her name. That's meant, there's no guideline, but I very much hope it'll find other women engineers, right? I'm sure we'll find a way. But it's just a means of me marking how special the school is for me and what this man has done. I mean, the speech isn't about him, but I really want to take a hat tip, Ilian. He's made my relationship with the school more substantive, closer, and what a phenomenal 10 years. Congratulations, man. Thank you. So continuing on the entertaining story, right? How I started my career. Look, I am what I call I used to be an uncontrolled vagabond, right? And now I think I have a little bit of structure and discipline, but I'm still a vagabond, right? And hopefully at least half of you in the NCR will relate to that, right? I mean, there's a certain DNA, as you guys know. And so my journey has been trying to make sense out of all of that and find and put together a career that actually both feeds me but also gives me some fun, right? So let me tell you about how that career is shaped, right? How many of you even know what that is? I know people there and there will know. If you guys actually know what that is, I'm actually impressed, right? This was my first business. So I used to market, make, and sell pirated audio cassettes in Mumbai. It is a great route to popularity when you're very young, by the way. I used to pride myself on what's the minimum lag time from something hitting #1 in the US to it arriving in my doorstep, and I could get it to the undergrad colleges in Bombay. And the markups on that were 300%, 400%, 500%, right? First business. That may be a little bit more familiar, but I think by 2030 this is going to disappear too, right? I was a photographer for a long time, for 5 or 6 years, photojournalist, and then drifted into architecture. I think that was mentioned in my CV. Why I even mentioned that is because construction runs in my family. I mentioned my mother earlier. So it's 3 generations of construction, and this is a topic I got very, very passionate about. But you clearly know from my CV that I didn't last in architecture very long, right? So this is me kind of flirting with different things, right? And why I say that is because, look, life can be messy, and there is nothing wrong with it being messy. I actually don't mind the fact that I meandered around for quite a long time, particularly through my 20s. Post which I joined my family business. My parents developed a construction technology. Now, by the way, God help whoever decides to develop construction technology in an emerging market which doesn't have any money for that technology. Right? Not an easy part. So they tried very hard, and that's what I spent most of my 20s doing, but essentially I gave up by the end of my 2020s, and that's what brought me to INSEAD. And look, let me be clear about this, guys. Without INSEAD, I would not have had the life I've had. Right? I occasionally say this to people, and I mean it. Ilian has heard me say this many, many times. If I take a year of my life, and I build a year from different bits and pieces that are very special, put it all together, and I compare it to the year at INSEAD, the year at INSEAD was better. Yeah? And I have refreshed that view over the years, so it's not like all the experiences I've had later haven't been great. I've had a fantastic career in life so far, but the year at INSEAD was better. I hope you guys feel the same way, and particularly in the coming years. So incredibly special. You went through my CV already, so let me wrap it up again a little bit quickly. I had an incredible run at McKinsey. By the way, I do not recommend, I know there are some career consultants in here from my batchmates. I do not recommend spending as long as I did. Right? But honestly, consulting for me was, kid in a candy store, because it allows you to be the kind of guy I was before, flirt around with 20 different things, and somehow appear like it all makes sense. Right? And because I flirted with different industries, different topics, different geographies, and still managed to, with just enough smarts and some basic problem-solving skills, hold together a career. Amazingly, they let me run the Singapore office, and I did not train wreck it. Right? It's still there. Right? No one killed themselves. Nobody killed each other. So all pretty good so far. But McKinsey was an incredible run, after which I joined a sovereign fund. And I'll tell you why I'm telling you this. Yeah? It's not because of how my CV reads on a piece of paper or how it comes across when I tell this story. There's a thread in here about what I discovered about what my true passion was, which I'll come to in a moment. So I spent a few years at a sovereign fund, again doing investing. So I kind of essentially went from what we traditionally called the sell side to the buy side for 4 years. After which I joined this firm called L. Catterton. I know it's a slightly funny name. By the way, the L is very popular. That's our shareholder, LVMH. Catterton is a mid-market American, US-based private equity firm. And you heard what we do, right? And through these experiences, it's 20 plus years now, I've had a chance to do some amazing things, right? You heard I spent a lot of time in healthcare. It's a topic I have enormous passion for. I was privileged to be able to put together, through my time at Khazana, the Asia's largest hospitals group. We bought several hospital companies around the region, 83 hospitals now and still growing. So one of the privileges that comes with that is I get a lot of WhatsApp calls, messages from people who want access to a bed in many, many cities. You can't imagine how useful that was during COVID. I spent a bunch of years in container shipping, which I, by the way, knew nothing about. This is a classic McKinsey thing. I showed up, I didn't even know what a container ship was. And then somehow 6 or 7 years later, I found myself in a room of drunken shipping magnates in Hamburg, where you toast each other and you ask each other these bizarre questions like, Herr Helmut, whatever, what do you think will be the price of a 2,000-ton TEU ship in 2030? And that's supposed to be the greatest honor that you can be bestowing on one of your friends, is to ask them to predict that price. That's the world I lived in for several years. After which, coming on to more cooler topics, this is my more recent years. That's a real car, yeah? That's not a rendering. This is what I'm doing right now. We're in the process of taking Lotus, the automotive company, public. Again, I suspect some of you youngsters may not even know what Lotus is. It's very much a sort of 20th century brand. But some of the older guys will remember what it is. And again, this is just pure, can I use words like sex appeal? I can, right? This is probably the sexiest thing I've ever done. Right? That's the world's fastest road car period, 0 to 300 in 8.6 seconds. Right? It actually, when you drive it upside down, it sticks. Yeah? And then more recently, again, something that might be more familiar to all of you. How many of you actually own a Birkenstock? Some? Yeah, there's a few, yeah. So good news, we don't just own C'est La Vie, we also own Birkenstock. Right? I knew that joining a consumer firm was the best thing I had done. Suddenly the work I do has meaning. Right? My daughter actually recognizes what I do. But what's the thread through all of this? And what's the lesson I have for you, right? We're all very, very good at storytelling. It's a very complicated world out there. You're going to be masters at storytelling because you're already probably very good at it, right? Yuval Harari talks a lot about telling stories. And what my learning, at least, and what got in the way of me finding my passion and becoming any good at it was that I'm actually also very good at telling stories, and I believed most of them. And, what ended up happening for a long period of time is I thought at each stage I needed a career of a particular kind. So now that I've left NCR and I'm at McKinsey, and then I'm stuck at McKinsey, and therefore I need to become managing partner, and then, you're a consultant, and then you need to go to the buy side, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Look, you will not go wrong making those decisions, but you're not going to have much fun. Fun comes when you find a passion. And, you probably heard that word a lot, finding a passion. Right? There are speeches you can find on YouTube about, generally, by the way, billionaires are the ones who tell you to follow your passion. I think that's the other thing out there. After you've made $1 billion, that's very easy. Right? I didn't find my passion because I knew it. I suspect most of you don't even know what your passion truly is. Right? And it's perfectly fine. Right? Life is 10% what happens and 90% how you react to it. I did find my passion, by the way. How many of you know what that is? Right? You do, huh? Well, that's the, the symbol of the Dutch East India Company. I came across a book in, I think, circa 2007, 2008, where I was reading about that institution in the context of some work I was doing with a large owner. And it made me curious because I was obsessed. At that time, I was doing management consulting. Right? That's what McKinsey does. And wondering why somehow the work didn't seem to make any sense. Because we seemed to be, even though I was working with the CEO, seemed to be stuck in the basement. And I was like, well, look, this is the CEO's office. So what's above the CEO's office? It's the board and the owners. Right? And that's when I started thinking at that point, not very deeply to be honest, but over long periods of time about ownership. The topic of ownership. What does it mean to own something? What does it mean to create a surplus? Is surplus good or bad for society? And tapped on many of the questions that Ilian actually touched on that have resulted in the kind of society we live in today. These are deep, fundamental questions that come to you only when you've been marinating in your topics for a while. I'm very fortunate I found it, right? Some people don't ever find it at all, right? And then after that, pretty much everything I've done in my career, which you cannot read on a CV, has been in some way my pursuit of this topic, right? By the way, it is a pretty dry, boring topic. It does not make me popular in my family dining table because I start talking about, stewardship and governance and et cetera, et cetera. But it is an obsession of mine. And I decided I would vote with my feet and use my career to try to find a way to play. Right? That's a great way to do it if you have the privilege to do that. I consider myself very, very lucky that I was able to pull that off. And so subsequently landing up at large owner firms allowed me to sit in boards, allowed me to invest large amounts of capital, and actually feel what it meant to be asking those questions. I'm not done yet. Yeah? I suspect I do make changes pretty quickly, the 14 years at McKinsey notwithstanding. And I have at least a couple more career changes left in me. All of us at some point want to teach. I very much doubt that NCR will have me, but you never know. Ilian is moving on. So, the bar hopefully will have gone down a little bit. Right? So I have only two things to say to you, right? Because I must have something slightly useful. Right? You'll hear this word passion a lot. I'm sure it's on your minds. I'm sure you guys talk to each other about it. You write notes, you write business plans. Passion isn't something that you're going to be born with or is going to come to you in a flash of lightning. It's work. You develop passion as well. You probably don't know what it is, and it doesn't have to be one thing. My advice to you is don't get obsessed by it. Just put it aside. First, just do. Just do. Tell the story later. Believe me, you're good enough at storytelling that you'll be able to tell that story later. And then at this stage in your career, because you guys are just starting out, I have to say this here, guys. When I showed up here, I thought you would look a lot younger than you do. It may be the clothes. I don't know. But I know you're starting out in your career. There's only one other trait I wish I had that and I wish I had enough. Somehow I pulled it off. That I hope you guys do have and nurture. Is just be reliable. For all the traits and skills and sector focus and function focus, etc., the one thing I have found in my career that I lack is people around me who do what they say and say what they do consistently. Right? You'd be amazed if you do that 5 times for someone, work will always find you. Always. That's the first and most important thing that I found. If I had just done that a little bit more consistently, I think my 20s would have looked quite different. So just 2 messages. 1, don't believe your own story. Tell it later. Right? And 2, just be reliable. Those are the only 2 things I have for you. Otherwise, guys, have an enormous amount of fun. I hope to see many of you up at Celavi later. I will be there. I will be host. And believe me, when you're the owner's host, life is very, very different. I look forward. Take care, guys.
C'est la vie. Thank you so much, Chinta, for those explanations on how you inspire the students. Now, among the faculty, it is very well known that INSEAD is a great place to teach, but it's also a relatively difficult place to teach because of all the diversity in the classroom. And as such, it is a great honor to be nominated and to win the Best Teaching Award, for which you as a class have voted. So can I please ask Jakub, who is on the MIM Council and Academic Rep, to join me on stage for giving the Best Teaching Awards.